which so constantly radically changed the styles of storytelling episode to episode. So, you know, one person might like a more serious, gritty type story. So they're going to like something like the Talons of Weng-Chiang. Somebody like something with a bit more humour to it. So they're going to like something like the City of Death. Some people might prefer adventures set on Earth. Some people might... You know, I don't think you can really say what is the best Doctor Who or what is the worst, because it's subjective. Everybody has their opinion. But, you know, I'd like to hear your opinions.
So, sorry guys, looks like we had some audio problems at the start of the show. I think we're all fixed now. We're dealing with a whole brand new software here.
We're using new software.
It's a new software, and so we're still learning it, and it seems to have a few weirdness things about it, which our other software didn't. Once you switched on the microphone on the old software, it stayed on.
Yeah.
This one, it seems to switch itself off at very strange odd points. So hopefully you're all hearing us now. We'll just go back to what we were saying earlier. The show is 1 year old this month.
Yes, 1 year old.
Thank you very much.
We're going to be reviewing Talons of Weng-Chiang, Girl in the Dalek.
Dalek.
That's as your choice. You gave your choice on Twitter, Dalek or Girl in the Fireplace, and you chose Dalek. And we're about to have, is it Barry who's going to give us his top 5?
Well, our theme of the week is favourite stories, and so we're going to kick it off with Barry giving his top 5, but then we want you guys to tweet in with what your stories are, and we'll read out your tweets, read out what your stories are. But let's hand over to Barry Aldridge.
Hello everyone, welcome to another Talking Who Top 5 with me, Barry Aldridge, and it is the 1 year anniversary of Talking Who. It just feels absolutely amazing. I mean, I remember being part of the second show onwards, though, helping out with Sean and Elsnar as well, so I had real fun though being there, and it's great though to be part of this format with Talking Who indeed. I absolutely love this, and I hope Talking Who carries on for a long time, so happy birthday though, Talking Who though, today. Hey. So yeah, my top 5 though for this week is going to be my top 5 Doctor Who stories of all time. Now these are just basically just my opinions about what I think are the Doctor Who stories for the moment. In the past they may have been slightly different, or in the future there could be a slight change, but this is just my opinions for now of my top 5 Doctor Who stories of all time. And I just want to just mention they're all from the classic series. All 5 of the stories I've actually chosen. So maybe I might do a top 5 new Who stories probably another time though, so we'll see. This is my top 5 favourite classic series Doctor Who stories ever. So here we go. Okay, so at number 5, it is without doubt my favourite long story. Any story that has gone beyond 8 episodes of Doctor Who, and it is in fact called The War Games. This was Patrick Troughton's swan song, written by Terence Dicks and Malcolm Hawke. Now, a lot of people would find 10-parters to be a bit of a drudgeon. And however, the great thing is this story does not hold up. I mean, I could watch this in one sitting. I'm not kidding. 10 episodes. I mean, the DVDs, you got 5 episodes on one, and then you got the other 5 on another disc, which is fine, you know. But it's one of those things I can just watch the entire story all the way through. Whereas some of those 4-parters later on, probably from the Colin Baker and maybe from Sylvester McCoy some of the times, they were a bit iffy at times and didn't really hold my attention as much as the War Games, I have to say. This is an absolutely marvellous story. I absolutely just love this story a lot, I have to say. This is really well put together now. I've got to give it real credit though to those guys, so well done to them as well. And I thought the performances were great, and that it just kept me going a bit, so sort of thing. So yeah, I may do a review though one day though of the War Games, so we'll have to wait and see on that. This is just a quick summary of these top 5s this week. At number 4, I'm going to give it to The Caves of Androzani. This is voted as Doctor Who as the best Doctor Who story ever. And I still rate it as one of the best of all time. You know, this is definitely my favourite Peter Davison one. And it's a pure classic. Like, it's got full of up and down emotions, and Robert Holmes writing it. It's just absolutely just wonderful just to absolutely watch. It's just really spectacular just to see in it. I just think it's wow. Sazet Jek and all different types of characters in there. And the Doctor go to Androzani Mine. You know, it had some nice little touches, and the Doctor is actually trying to save a friend's life, which is amazing, or save his life. They're in real physical danger, the Doctor and Perry, and I absolutely love the thrill of this story. There's nothing I can really say bad about it. course, none of these stories I would say physically bad. Any of the stories in my top 5. At number 3 is, without doubt, probably my favourite Patrick Troughton story, is in fact The Mind Robber from his final season. And I have to say, this is one of my favourite out-of-trip Doctor Who stories, written by Peter Lang, and also Derek Sherwin, just for episode 1. I have to say, it was filled with roller coasters. It has a dose of fiction in there, loads and loads of fiction about characters. And I just love the idea of it. You know, the Doctor dealing with someone named the Master, even though it's not the same Master that we all know in that. It's a very, very sort of interesting concept, and I absolutely love it. And I think with the 5 parts, it did keep me engaged quite a bit. So, yeah, The Mind Robber is definitely my number 3. At number 2, this is where it comes down to it. It's very, very tricky between number 1 and number 2. They're both written by the same writer, Robert Holmes. Well, one of them under a pseudonym and the other, you know, with his own name in that. At number 2, I have to give it to The Pyramids of Mars. Now, I could watch this story over and over again, like 3 times in a row. I'm not kidding. I did that, though, when I first got it. I just thought it was absolutely amazing story that deals with Sutekh, Egyptology and that. And I just think Sutekh is one of the best villains. I mean, I said, yeah, he's my favourite mythical god creature. And I think he is. He's definitely the best one because he was, the Doctor found him virtually impossible to beat. It just took a stroke of luck, though. But however, I just think the story structure is just absolutely right. It just had something in there and it made you sort of believe about what was actually going on. So here is my number 1. Now, my number 1 of all time is probably without doubt my favourite 6-parter in Doctor Who ever. Another sort of long story, but you know, it kept me going a bit. It was in fact the Talons of Weng-Chiang, the Doctor and Leah going to Victorian London. And again, written by Robert Holmes. I've got to say, it's absolutely wonderful. I mean, the Doctor teaching Leela certain things, and you've got wonderful characters in there, Henry Jago and Professor Lightfoot, and the characters in there are just really great. And Robert Holmes is just absolutely fantastic at character writing. He's just really spot on, and the humour in there. I could not fault this story for a million years. I could watch this story over and over again and think, wow, this really is quite well done. And there were so many good ideas in there, and you had a good director like David Maloney, who also directed The Mind Robber in that top 5 as well. And you know, it's just, everything is just in there. All 5 of my stories are absolutely great. I think there could be a swap around between each of all the stories. Like one week I may think Talons of Weng-Chiang is my favourite, and then I'll go, no, The Case of Androzani. But yeah, these are my 5 favourite Doctor Who stories. Sort of like a top 5, but could change every now and then. But yeah, thanks very much though for everybody that were watching. Thanks though, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what Talking Who has got in the future. Take care, everyone, and I'll speak to you.
There we go. So, Barry's number 1 story, The Talons of Weng-Chiang.
Very popular choice with a lot of people, that story.
My number 1 story, The Talons of Weng-Chiang. Your number 1 story?
My number 1 story would have to be The City of Death.
The City of Death.
Yes.
There you go. So,
well, you know, if you had to say, you know, like my top 5 ones that I've enjoyed, you know, definitely you'd have The Talons of Weng-Chiang, Robots of Death.
Yeah.
And
Pyramids of Mars. Which is Barry's number 2.
Yeah.
So we will be looking at Talons of Weng-Chiang later. And just to read out, we've had a choice from who was it? It was Star PD7 who picks Rose. And Star PD7 also says Happy Talking Who anniversary.
Thank you.
Gallifrey Times gets a big shout out because they are officially the 800th YouTuber who subscribed to our channel. And Yoz Creative, City of Death.
Yeah, it's a bloody good story, that one.
And Gallifrey Times agrees the City of Death is very good as well.
Yes. Well, you do have Lala Ward running around in a school uniform in that one.
Yes, indeed. On purpose, probably, I'm sure.
Yes.
Last week, we asked our followers on Twitter to pick a story for us to review this week out of 2 relatively newish
Doctor Who
stories. And we asked you to pick between Dalek and the Girl in the Fireplace, and you picked Dalek. So before we review Dalek, here's a short clip.
A great big museum.
An alien museum. Someone's got a hobby.
The cage contains my one living specimen.
Must have fallen through time, the only survivor.
It's killing him! Do something!
I swear, no one on this base is safe. You've got to keep it in that cell.
He can't get out. That lock's got 1 billion combinations.
Civilians, let him through!
That thing downstairs is going to kill every last Just one of us. What's the nearest town?
Salt Lake City.
Population.
1 million.
All dead. If you want orders, follow this one. Why don't you just die?
We're nearly there. Give us 2 seconds.
I've come to help. I'm the doctor.
Exterminate!
Impossible.
Well, actually, I felt a real shame with that story that it was called Dalek and it was all advertised in advance. The Dalek was returning in
They
that.
could have done it as a surprise.
Just imagine if I know from
Yeah.
ratings wise, they probably wanted all the
Of course.
ratings that the Daleks' return
Yeah.
would generate in that. But really, just imagine if suddenly, they had just been revealed at that point. What a shock it would have been.
Yes, you discover what the Metaltron is.
Yes.
But of course, up to that point, you didn't even know what to expect. It would have been quite good. But the story... Okay, so the Doctor and Rose arrive in 2012.
Yes.
So actually, any time now, we
Yep.
could be expecting them in Utah,
Mm-hmm.
Salt Lake City, in a bunker somewhere. And
The bunker of Von Statten.
Von Statten, who is a collector of alien artifacts.
A concept of Russell T Davies was later emerged in Torchwood. The idea of alien artifacts turning up
Well,
on Earth.
because they retconned Torchwood as always having been around,
Yeah.
it almost makes no sense that he actually has amassed this thing, because Torchwood would have been on his case the whole time, wouldn't they?
Torchwood are a British-based organisation.
But he was buying things from eBay. They would have just been
Yes.
outbidding him all the time and making sure they
Yeah.
got it. Alien artifacts on eBay? Come on. That's the only annoying thing to me about that particular story is, really, would you put alien artifacts on eBay?
Yeah.
It seemed kind of silly. But anyway, 2012, and of course, when they first arrive, you have that wonderful moment when he sees this
A
Cyberman
Cyberman, yes.
helmet in there, which is
And-
actually
and
the wrong helmet, would you say? Surely
No.
it would have been an invasion
It would have been
or a Silver Nemesis helmet, perhaps, but
re-
not
really-
a Revenge of the Cyberman
Well, you
helmet,
never know because
which was set in the future.
Yeah, but you never really know because Cybermen have crude limited time travel technology, and you don't know what other event. Every time the Cybermen have turned up on Earth, it hasn't been just the Doctor who's fought them necessarily. So, not necessarily wrong, but at that point when the that Cyberman helmet is seen,
Yeah,
is almost like the first time there'd really been a strong reference to classic Doctor Who
sure.
in the show.
Yeah,
And it's really the only time that a classic monster has been represented in its original form.
right. Indeed, it
Yes.
was an actual helmet from Revenge
Yes.
of the Cybermen,
Although
untouched.
although you have heard about what's happening with the Daleks
We have indeed.
in the next
Absolutely,
season.
yes. There's been a call out for classic Daleks.
Every form of Dalek is apparently turning up in the next season. So they've got Daleks going back to the 1960s. And,
That's right. They
all-
did release a photograph of a 1960s style Dalek.
Yes.
So this is it's exciting, and I'm kind of very curious about what they're going to do in this particular story.
Yeah. But anyway, getting back to Dalek.
Yes.
So, and this story kind of really goes into establishing a lot of the new series backstory.
Yes. This is the
the
first.
idea of the Time War,
Absolutely.
of the Great War, final war between the Daleks and the Time Lords, about the Doctor being completely on his own. There was something in his performance that reminded me also a bit of Tom Baker
Right.
with Christopher Eccleston. That everything, he seems to not take things seriously, but the moment he takes something seriously actually becomes, because the Doctor's scared by something, it actually becomes something very scary.
Sure.
So Christopher Eccleston plays it with absolute conviction when he sees this Dalek and he freaks out at seeing one.
I mean, one thing we don't know, of course, is whether it's the 8th or the 9th Doctor who was involved in the Time War.
Yeah.
We don't actually know this. There's been no reference.
We still don't know.
We still don't.
Still don't
and
know.
we probably
There
will never.
is-
We probably
There
will
is
never
an
know.
assumption of fans that it was the 8th Doctor and he regenerated at the end of it is one assumption of the fans.
But what you get an impression of Christopher Eccleston in this story is that this is the soldier Doctor.
Yes.
Because he sort of switches into his soldier mode. He becomes extremely serious.
Yeah.
He's not cracking any jokes, really at all. And his instinct is we have to destroy the Dalek.
Yeah.
Even though it's the last Dalek, it's at this particular stage defenseless because they don't. It's not until Rose touches the Dalek that he becomes a threat. But it's still, regardless of that, it's not even a threat. He wants to destroy. He wants to kill it.
Well, even more so, what I found quite interesting in this story as well was it's almost like Russell T Davies had given the writer an edict of make the Dalek as threatening as possible. And you can tell throughout the story, it's like they tick off each box of everything people had made jokes about Daleks in the past. They kind of like show that's actually not a laughing matter. Like people would joke about the Daleks having like a sink plunger hand, and suddenly that becomes a really deadly, horrific weapon.
Yes.
And people joke about the Daleks' mobility problems or going upstairs and things like that. So I almost felt like, this episode was to kind of like not just re-establish the Dalek, but also to kind of like
make them threatening.
Yes.
Again.
Originally, this story was supposed to be the last time you would ever see that design of Dalek. The idea was going to be they would have this story with what was effectively a classic design Dalek, and then when the Daleks returned at the end of the series, it would be a brand new design. Yet they found they couldn't do anything that would beat the original design, so it ended up staying.
And of course, the very famously, the height of the Dalek was chosen specifically so that the eye stalk was at eye level with Rose, with Billy Piper. And actually, those particular scenes worked really, really well, and you can understand why they did that.
They actually also went back and did something which hadn't been done since Hartnell Who, of having the eyepiece of the Dalek glowing with light. And I think that's, I'm surprised they stopped doing it, but I suppose it's a budgetary cost. But that I always felt gave the Daleks a bit more life to them when they did that.
And actually, the operator of this particular Dalek does a superb job because in the story, the Dalek questions himself, he questions his existence, and after obviously having been touched by Rose, his DNA is transformed.
Yeah.
But a Dalek is just a pepper pot. And all the acting is done with this eye stalk in an incredible way, actually.
Well, I've got to say, though, I felt that what they'd done when the production team approached this story was they went back to the black and white William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton Dalek stories. And if you rewatch any of those stories, you'll see the directors obviously spent a lot of time with the movement of the Daleks themselves. The Daleks are constantly moving, they're constantly doing stuff, and once they had like a 5-year break, and when they returned in Day of the Daleks, it's almost like they had no directors who knew how to direct Daleks and keep them interesting. And suddenly the Daleks seemed to move from what seemed like this hyperactive creature which was always about to do something to something that was more of a mechanized being which was kind of like minimalist and only really moved when needed. And I felt that I've always felt all of the new Doctor Who series, when they've approached the Dalek, I've always felt that spiritually they're very much more connected with the Hartnell and the Troughton Dalek stories.
Cool, indeed, yeah. There's obviously this kind of a role reversal between the Doctor and the Dalek as well, because after the Dalek starts transforming, he becomes extremely sympathetic, and the Doctor becomes almost psychopathically.
But the Dalek still slaughters an awful lot of people in this episode.
It is quite. I mean, the writing I think is fantastic.
It was actually it was based on a Big Finish play, called I believe Jubilee.
I didn't know that. No?
Yes.
Does the original writer get a credit?
Yes, they do actually in it. Yeah,
that's good. It's good to know. Gallifrey Times says this. I think the Cyberman helmet was a great addition to the episode. And also says, the Gallifrey Times also says, it could have been called Something is Returning. and also says, amazing story. Christopher Eccleston and Billy Piper were so good in this episode. So, Dalek, Dalek, it's episode 6, I think, of the first series.
For me, it was very interesting because I felt the first 5 episodes of Doctor Who, for me, had actually been very weak. I don't know how you felt. I did not like, what was it? What was the 2 parts? Aliens in London and World War 3. I felt were very weak stories. You had the excellent one though with Charles Dickens and the Geth. What was that one? But there was that one. There was the one where the Doctor takes Rose to the 51st century, and I felt they were kind of weak, and you'd only really had the Charles Dickens one of being quite strong, and suddenly you had this Dalek one, which was like poof. And I felt this was, really when Doctor Who suddenly started to hit its stride.
And of course, what was really interesting, of course, about Christopher Eccleston's Doctor is actually he sacrifices Rose. Rose, actually, as far as he's concerned,
but he can only do it the once. He can't. It's such a tough decision to make. Decision. He can't actually make it a second time.
But he's a Doctor who could actually make that decision if he felt there was a wider benefit to sacrificing the companion, which he obviously did at this particular time.
He's seen the destructive capability. I mean, the Daleks are, and they had to establish. I felt like they had to very quickly establish the Daleks for new viewers as this incredible threat.
I mean, I've been critical of the Rose Tyler character in her stories with David Tennant. But in this particular story, and I think with Christopher Eccleston, she worked quite well as a character. And it would have been really interesting, because as you've said before, the Doctor has always had his companion. But Rose kind of straddled 2 Doctors equally. But also, David Tennant had so many companions, one after the other, that did he actually have his companion? Maybe not. And if Christopher Eccleston had stayed one more season and then Rose left at the same time and then David Tennant started and with a whole new it might have been quite a different tenth Doctor.
It appeared like he almost got a companion at the end of this, that kid from Coronation Street who goes on the TARDIS and he has like one trip and that's it,
which actually was a bit of a waste because I actually really liked his character and I quite like the flirtation between Rose and Adam because it was
so bizarre to just bring this character in, make a new character and then get rid of him an episode later. It was very weird.
You think he should have done at least a couple more or something?
I have no idea. It just seemed very peculiar, that
I guess they needed someone to screw up in the next episode. And I guess it couldn't have been the companion. So they had to create a new companion just for that purpose. But yeah, he's kind of like the forgotten companion because he does, I guess. If
he did travel,
legitimately
well, I don't understand this. You've got Sarah Kingdom, who was in one story, the Dalek Master Plan, and she's regarded as a companion. You have Kylie Minogue seems to be regarded as a companion from her one story, and Michelle Ryan. But Adam doesn't seem to be regarded as a companion. Mickey Smith doesn't seem to be regarded as a companion.
And Mickey Smith most definitely is a companion.
There's a lot of confusion over Captain Jack. What is the what point are you a companion? Are you not a companion? I mean,
do you think it's just biased against guys?
I have no idea.
The whole idea of the companion.
There was even can't even remember. It was Katerina who turned up in the last episode of the Mythmakers
and died the next episode.
Died like 3 or 4 episodes later in the Dalek Master Plan, and it was like the most pointless companion ever.
So there we go. That's our Dalek review.
It's a great story.
It's a great story.
Definitely, it's the best of all the Christopher Eccleston stories, and it is one of the best classic, one of the best new Doctor Who stories. Totally. And it's one of the, I have to say, there's only been a few, but it's one of those, I've always felt one big problem new Doctor Who has is managing to make a story work within the 44-minute bracket. It has a lot of difficulty doing that. And there's been only a couple in my mind that have this. Girl in the Fireplace, Blink are very good examples. The Doctor's Wife. But this is very much really does work within that format, and it's a great story.
Totally agree.
I also think, I think got to give a shout out to the actor who played Von Staten. I felt he gave
he's great, yeah.
really strong performance in that. He seems to be, every time, he's that American actor living in England who gets it every time there's something set in America or needing an Americans which is shot in England, like, the Bourne movie or whatever. He's that American guy who's, living over here.
So, moving on. Doctor Who convention, the official one by the BBC Worldwide, was last month, and it's Mother Who does our podcast reviews, went there, and so she's put together her own review of the convention.
Let's have a look at that.
This time last month I was in Cardiff for the first ever official BBC Doctor Who convention, and this is me trying to review it in 3 minutes. The tickets for the convention cost £99 and it was £20 extra for any autographs or photographs you wanted taken with the main stars or writers. Suffice to say, after shelling out £400 on 4 tickets, I didn't want to pay for the extras, although looking back, I'm pretty wishing that I did now. A few weeks after booking the tickets, we received an email to say that because we were going to the convention, we could now apply to get tickets to go to the BBC studio and have a look around the TARDIS. That is the real TARDIS, where the Doctor, Amy and Rory cavort about. Yes, please, BBC. Our TARDIS tour was on the Saturday and our convention day was the Sunday. I'd like to say at this juncture that when I stepped off that coach after the TARDIS tour, I could quite happily have gone home then, and the convention to me was a bit of a letdown after that. The doors for the convention opened at 9 o'clock and we got there about 8:30. There were already hundreds of people snaking their way around in a queue. One really good thing about the convention was there were lots of helpers there, all wearing bright yellow t-shirts so they were easy to spot. And as soon as we joined the end of our queue, one of these helpers pounced on us, checked our tickets and then gave us Doctor Who goodie bags. In these bags, there were your lanyard that you had to wear all day, your official convention programme, a souvenir ticket, a DVD, and some postcards and just some other little advertising bits and pieces. And then, at about 9:15, one Ood and a Silurian came out of the convention centre and started making their way around the queues that were forming. I thought this was a brilliant touch. It just kept the impatient crowds a bit calmer, as well as terrifying loads of children and providing lots and lots of photo opportunities for people. The convention ticket holders were split into 2 groups, Ood and Silurian. You chose this at time of booking. I, of course, picked Ood. The 2 streams had their own timetable, so pretty much most of the day had been planned out for us. There were 3 main talks, each lasting about an hour. Creators and directors, Meet the Stars, very exciting, and Doctor Who Uncut. These were talks held in huge auditoriums. I found them quite interesting. Some of them I found really interesting. But apart from the Meet the Stars panel, the kids and my partner both got a bit bored in all those talks. We also got to see a trailer for Series 7, which was really exciting, getting to see that on the big screen and on HD. Throughout the day there were also prosthetics demonstrations going on, and the special effects studio ran I think 4 times in the day. This was my favourite part of the actual convention day. Danny Hargreaves is an absolutely wonderful man, and to see the special effects taking part and to see your own son blowing up a Cyberman is quite something. Unfortunately, I was so in awe of this Cyberman walking around, I didn't even think to get the camera out. I'd just like to mention that on booking the tickets, it did state that this wouldn't be very child-friendly.
There we go. Doctor Who convention. Thank you very much. It's Mother Who. Indeed.
And you can follow her on Twitter, can you not?
You can at It's Mother Who. And we're also being followed by The Valyard.
Oh my, that's a bit worrying if the Valyard's following us.
And I think he's probably claiming any technical difficulty we may have had earlier.
What, down to him?
Down to him.
Not surprised. Do you think we might ever see the Valeyard returning on new Doctor Who?
Well, do you think this Dream Lord character could be morphed into the Valeyard? Because we are now
Dream Lord,
the one with Amy's Choice.
Oh right, yes.
Because we are approaching. We only need one more Doctor, and then we're sort of getting into the realms of the Valeyard
but
territory.
the Valeyard was only a possibility. I'd be more curious the next season if we will see a return of Omega.
Well, would that just be awesome?
Well, for the 10th anniversary, the villain was Omega. For the 20th anniversary, the villain was Omega. Unfortunately, there was no 30th or 40th anniversary.
Well,
story.
there was that Children in Need one, wasn't there? For the 30th?
What? Yes, that was. What was it? Dimensions in
in
Time.
Time.
One of the greatest Doctor Who stories. Doctor Who crosses over with EastEnders.
And why not? I mean, you
only have to watch it to realise.
He arrives in other parts of London. Why wouldn't he not arrive in Albert
3D?
Why would he not arrive in Albert Square?
3D as well, if you remember.
If you could even get any glasses back then.
Yeah, I know. I remember watching it in 3D, so it can never be screened again.
That's right. They don't have the rights for it, do they?
No.
Not even for charity.
What a shame.
What a shame indeed. So, speaking of conventions, 11th hour?
Yes.
How are we progressing?
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Only 2 months to go now.
2 months to go, yeah.
So make sure you get your tickets. www.starfury.co.uk. It's a 3-day Doctor Who convention. 15th to the 17th of June at the Birmingham Hilton Hotel. That's not just focused on Doctor Who, but it's more specifically focused on the 11th Doctor. So we've got Matt Smith making an appearance. Alex Kingston. Francis Barber, Mark Shepherd, Morgan Shepherd, Simon Fisher-Becker. We've got Tony Lee, who writes the comic books, Jim Swallows, who's one of the novelists, coming along. We're going to have guest talks, photo sessions, autograph sessions, lots of cosplay, discos every night. It's going to be a great weekend. Tickets, £90 for a regular ticket, and that gets you autographs from the guests as well as entry for 3 days. Once Matt's confirmed what day he's attending, though, once he's confirmed that, we'll also be making 1-day tickets available as well.
Excellent, fantastic. And the autographs,
yes.
How does that work?
Right, well, we go through the autograph session. The gold ticket holders will go through first on the Saturday. Once they're all through, the regular tickets all go through. Matt will be doing a separate autograph session to everybody else. So he'll be going through on 2 autograph sessions. But attendees get 1 autograph from each guest, included in the ticket price. And if you wanted an additional autograph, that'll be £10.
Okay, so how many guests are you talking about? What is that?
At the moment, there's 8.
8 guests. So,
but there may be 2 more.
If you were to buy, if you had to be charged separately, that would have been £80 anyway.
Yeah, but to be honest, if you look at shows like Collectomania or
some of them being charged £20,
London Film and Comic Con or London Expo or something like that, something like Matt Smith would probably be like £40 to £50.
So it's
definitely the price of the ticket alone more than covers what those autographs would normally cost you.
Indeed.
Then you've got the parties, the guest talks, the opening ceremonies, the closing ceremonies, everything else on top. So it's definitely if you compare it with the pricing structure of other events, it's definitely getting a good deal in here. Plus you get to meet Matt Smith.
And you get to meet other fans.
Yes.
And hang out and make new friends as well, which is very important. If you tweet at Tom_Orton, Tom's compiling a list of Twitter followers of Talking who are all going to go to the 11th hour.
Yeah.
And we're going to arrange probably early on for all the Twitter followers to sort of get together and meet each other, because a lot of people have only met each other on Twitter. They've not actually met each other face to face. We are there for a whole weekend, so it'd be nice if we all got together early, meet each other, get familiar with each other, because then we can spend an entire weekend as friends. And that's the whole idea. And some panels as well.
There'll be probably about 5 or 6 panels every day.
Cool. So website is starfury.co.uk. Go check it out, and and sign up if it sounds your kind of thing. So, Elisabeth Sladen, number one companion.
Definitely with everybody.
With a lot of people. Well, April last year, just before we went on air, a day before Talking Who launched, was the sad news that Elisabeth had passed away. A lot of fans obviously have been talking about her over the year, and of course in this last month, in this anniversary, they've been tweeting a lot on Twitter. Annie Fairfield has gone on Twitter and she's collated a lot of the stories of people who got to meet her, and this is the video that she's put together.
Hello, I'm Annie Fairfall here with a collection of fan memories, photos, stories, and favorite clips to honor the first anniversary of the loss of Elisabeth Sladen, our Sarah Jane Smith. So many of you responded with so much for Elisabeth that I could have made an hour of this easily. So if you don't see what you sent, please know how very much it was appreciated. Elisabeth deserved it. Now, we're going to start off with a joyful moment from the most requested episode of all, School Reunion. And then we'll go from there.
With you, did he do that thing where he'd explain something at like 90 miles per hour and you go, what? And he'd look at you like he just dribbled on your shirt?
All the time. Does he still stroke bits of the TARDIS?
Yeah, he does. I'm like, do you two want to be alone?
How's it going? What? Listen, I need to find out what's programmed inside these. What? Stop it.
Now we're going to spend a couple of minutes looking at a few fan stories. Rick sent this cheery shot of Elisabeth where he says, I was lucky enough to bump into her at Tesco's in Cardiff Bay. She was beautiful, kind, and gracious to me, and I went to work and was a mess because I'd just met Sarah Jane and it was all real. Corey says, I had the pleasure of meeting her once. She was a warm, friendly, compassionate lady with a heart of gold. The universe will be a lonelier place without her. Brandon and her friends, she's the one in front, asked Liz for a chat after a theater performance. And though she was obviously frail, she came out in the cold to sign autographs and pose for photos. She was wonderful. Tom was taking photos of Elisabeth and Sylvester McCoy when they suddenly invited him behind the table for shots with them, a kindness he's never ever forgotten. Those were the fans, but let's hear from the lady herself on Sarah Jane. This clip is from The Five Doctors in 1983, when she was paired after several years with John Pertwee.
It was rather strange going back as John's assistant, because for 2 years I'd been Tom's assistant, and not only do you adapt, but you change your own performance. You need
imagine,
to.
yes.
So going back to John, it was like, am I going to be that Sarah, or am I going to be the Sarah that was with him as the other doctor? Well, he would prefer his assistant to be more little girlish, so I had to play up to that when I came back as this, which was quite strange. But did you hear him say there, all teeth and curls? That was my line.
Your line.
And I said, I wrote a good line. Lizzie, I think I should say that line. I was so cross.
Cheeky John.
He did that, though.
And here's a brief clip to illustrate her point.
Go on, I'm listening.
Right. So, there they all were in the cellar, chanting away like Billy-O, when all of a sudden this giant spider appeared and jumped on Lupton's back.
It's coherent thought.
Oh, Doctor, really?
A scientific pun. What did you say?
I said, really, this is important, but you're so interested in that wretched...
Before that, what did you say before that? Did you say spider?
That's right.
Now listen to me, Sarah, this is very important. Tell me the whole story, right from the beginning.
That was from The Planet of the Spiders, where Sarah Jane played the intrepid girl reporter to the limit. But Elisabeth Sladen had no idea the influence she was wielding. Here she is with author David Southwell, who wrote, That I became a journalist is in a small way down to how Liz Sladen brought the character to life. She made her deeply noble, intensely heroic, and eminently lovable. Now, just to lighten up for a moment, who do you think wore the rubber insect better? Time to get back to the doctors. Lee Moon suggested this clip because, as he said, it's my favorite moment from Pyramids of Mars. There's a moment of calm in the garden. She says, "Your shoes need cleaning." It's a beautiful moment between two friends that's beautifully played. It also clearly shows the evolution of Sarah Jane.
Are you going to help, or are you just going to stand there and admire the scenery?
Your shoes need repairing. I actually wasn't admiring the scenery. I was waiting for you to tell me what to do.
Eventually, she said goodbye to the doctor. But not forever.
Don't forget me.
Oh, Sarah. Don't you forget me.
Bye, Doctor.
Bye.
You know, travel does broaden the mind.
Yes. Till we meet again, Sarah.
Hello, Sarah Jane.
It's you. Oh, Doctor. Oh my God, it's you, isn't it? You've regenerated.
Yeah, half a dozen times since we last met.
You look incredible.
So do you.
I got old.
So, gosh, that was different. Hello, everyone.
Who are you? Where's Clyde?
Come on, Ronnie, use your brain. Clyde and I swap places, yes? I'm where he was, so he's where I was, which means right now, ooh, he's in a lot of trouble.
No, Ronnie, don't you see? It's you, isn't it? Oh, you've done it again.
Hello, Sarah Jane.
Doctor? That's the doctor.
What doctor? The doctor? My doctor?
Yeah, well, he can change his face.
I know. Into a baby's.
Boy, imagine it from my point of view. Last time I saw you, Joe Grant, you were what, 21, 22? It's like someone baked you.
And now some words from a few of her fans. It was such a joy to finally get to meet Elisabeth Sladen at a convention for her many American fans. It was truly a great moment that will be one of the major highlights of my Doctor Who convention experiences. Elisabeth Sladen was instrumental in Doctor Who's success during her tenure on the show, especially alongside Tom Baker. She will never be forgotten, and it's a testament to the success of her character that she returned to the role in the Sarah Jane adventures. Here is a girl who's feisty, not afraid of giving her opinion or arguing with the Doctor, but it was so much more than that. Both the third and fourth Doctor loved her, and clearly had a strong affection for Sarah. This was no acting. Everyone loved Elisabeth Sladen, and what's not to love? My own son, when asked about her, couldn't look me in the eye, but echoed Tom Baker by saying, "She was a good girl, Mom, and I hate cancer." None of us could agree more. And finally, two record-holding companions. Fraser Hines, who as Janie McCrimmon was the longest-serving companion, and Elisabeth, who served under 4 doctors, and ended up with her own spin-off, the Sarah Jane Adventures. Sorry, K9. Normally I'd sign off right now, but for Elisabeth Sladen, our Sarah Jane. Out. Hello, I'm Annie Fairfall, here with a collection of fan...
Here we go. Thank you very much, Annie. That was a lovely video. And thanks for everyone on Twitter who tweeted and sent emails to Annie and contributed to that video of your memories as well. That's great. So,
now we're going to round off tonight's episode with a review of a classic Doctor Who story. One of the stories that's actually probably one of the most fondly remembered Doctor Who stories among fans, and that's the Talons of Weng-Chiang.
My personal favourite, I think, as well.
It's an amazing story. It's one of the favourites. To put it in context, this was a story that took place at the end of season 14.
With the Fourth Doctor and Leela.
With the Fourth Doctor and Leela. It was Leela's third story. She'd been introduced in the
Face
of Evil. And the idea was to do a Pygmalion type thing with a character. To introduce a character who was primitive, and the Doctor would play kind of like a Professor Higgins and try and educate her. And in this story, this is the first story where she's seen wearing regular clothes.
Yeah.
And the Doctor is brought into Victorian times to try and teach her something of her ancestors and of how to behave. So you see very much Leela's primitive attitudes coming into a clash with Victorian...
Culture clash.
Yes.
Proper culture clash.
Story was written by Robert Holmes, oddly enough, at very much the last minute. It was originally going to be a story by Robert Banks Stewart, who had written Terror of the Zygons, and it was going to be a story called Foe from the Future, when he suddenly got another job, and at the last minute Robert Holmes had to write this story. It's a fantastic job, and it was the last story produced by Philip Hinchcliffe, and it's felt very much by the fans that this was a golden period. For 3 years, some of the best ever Doctor Who stories were produced. You had The Ark in Space, Genesis of the Daleks, Terror of the Zygons, Seeds of Doom, Pyramids of Mars, Mask of Mandragora, Robots of Death, Talons of Weng-Chiang. Probably some of the greatest stories, one after the other, some of the best ever stories in Doctor Who's history, which all still hold up to this day. And because he knew this was going to be his last story, he actually wildly overspent on the budget, which greatly affected the next season of Doctor Who. But he didn't care really, and it really shows. I mean, this one, and this is something Doctor Who, as fans will know, classic Doctor Who very often had a problem with special effects, with limited budget. And yet, one of the things that could always do well was period. We already had this season, The Mask of Mandragora, which looked fantastic.
Yep.
And here's another example. Go to Victorian times. It looks great. The sets look great. The location work looks great. There's even a story that they were doing a location shoot down a street to make it look like a Victorian street. And they'd asked all the residents to move their cars. And one of the residents was on holiday and he left his Jaguar on the street. So they covered it in hay.
Anyway, let's show a very brief clip.
Entertainment for Saturday evening on BBC One. At 6:30, Doctor Who. The Doctor is joined by Leela to face the Talons of Weng-Chiang.
Oh, Magnus Greel. Magnus Greel, the infamous Butcher of Brisbane, the villain of this story. Some great villains. You actually had Magnus Greel.
Yeah.
Mr. Sin.
Mr. Sin, played by Deep Roy.
Yes, who, as well as having been in Doctor Who, has also been in Blake 7, Star Wars, and Star Trek.
Well, there you go.
And there were several million Deep Roys in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
There was, yeah.
And, of course, there was Lee Seng-Chang. Now, if there was one thing I would say, there was only one thing, criticism I could have for this episode, is Lee Seng-Chang. It's a fantastic performance, but you can't help but feel the racism in casting an English actor to play a Chinaman and have makeup put on him when there's so many good Chinese actors out of work. And I know it's from the 70s, but that's the only criticism.
So the story is that the Doctor and Leela arrive in Victorian London, and Lee Seng-Chang is a conjurer at the this theatre.
They arrive in London, and there's a series of Jack the Ripper style murders are taking place. Women are going missing, but the Doctor and Leela witness the murder of a cabbie who believes that his wife went missing after she had gone to see hypnotised by Lee Seng-Chang while they'd been to see him at the theatre. So the Doctor and Leela take up this case and they go to the theatre, and they also meet up with a police pathologist, Henry Lightfoot, and they also meet at the theatre. Can't remember his full name. Jago.
Yeah.
And they form a little team to find out what's going on. And there's a lot of, very much during Robert Holmes' period, they would take classic popular stories and adapt them for Doctor. And this covers a lot of, there's a lot of kind of like, things are parodied in this. It starts off, you've got Phantom of the Opera going on, you've got Jack the Ripper going on,
Sherlock Holmes.
It moves into Fu Manchu territory as well.
Yeah.
Well, towards the end, when they're up against the Tongs at down at the docks, it's very much in whole Fu Manchu. And I've got to say, Mr. Sin, for me, is one of the scariest villains they ever had on the show. He's absolutely terrifying. And there were huge criticisms at the time for this story, for the violence, for the horror in it. But I've got to say, it's fantastic. And it's one of those, there was a couple of stories during this period where you could have just taken the script or taken the entire production and it could have been easily done as a Hammer horror.
Absolutely, no, I agree. Yeah.
Very, very easily.
Now,
I'm watching it, I find it very difficult to believe that this was classed as children's television as well.
Well, I mean, to put also that into context, the violence of this particular era of Doctor Who, what was considered perceived violence, is, of course, it did rattle a few cages, and the Mary Whitehouse, and who was a campaigner against a lot of violence and sex that was on television, which she perceived to be too much of it, or any of it, to be honest.
Yeah.
But it rattled the BBC's cages to the point that that may have been one of the reasons why, of course, Philip Hinchcliffe had to leave.
He had to,
because
the thing is
they needed a reboot without the violence.
Philip Hinchcliffe was moved on to a different show called Target, which was the BBC's attempt to do a show called, to copy a popular series at the time, The Sweeney. So it was an attempt for them to do a violent action cop series. And it was seen within the BBC as a move up for Philip Hinchcliffe. And alongside Verity Lambert, Philip Hinchcliffe has probably gone on to be the most successful producer. So if you look at his career, he's had a fantastic career as a producer.
But I suppose the point was that he wasn't consulted. It just happened.
But that's very rare. Usually a producer would say, I want off this show. And he was already planning the 4th season of Doctor Who when he was pretty much told, you've got a promotion, you're off this show. And it is pretty much seen that he was getting huge. Actually, even compared to today, that period when he was producer, Doctor Who had its highest ever ratings.
Yeah.
So, on one respect, he was hugely successful. It was getting huge ratings and it was getting great critical response. But on the flip side, they were having all this flack from Mary Whitehouse. So, I think that the BBC think, well, let's reward him for the ratings and promote him, and we kill two birds with one stone. And Graham Williams, another producer, was brought in to replace Philip Hinchcliffe, and he had the very difficult remit of cut down on the violence and also cut the budget but keep the ratings as high. And so they introduced a lot more comedy, a lot more kind of like fantasy adventure, and a lot more sci-fi into the series.
I mean, Leela as a character was a violent character. I mean, you'll see if you haven't seen Talons of Weng-Chiang. I mean, she's kills.
Yes, but Leela doesn't. When you say she kills, she doesn't kill without justification. She kills to defend herself. She She meets out the level of force that is set on her. At one point, at the very first episode, she kills an assassin that's sent to kill the Doctor, and she kills him, and the Doctor's horrified that she's killed this assassin, and she points out he was going to kill you. And so, there is a very funny scene though where Leela is explaining to Dr. Lightfoot about when they're examining a body, and he says, I think the killer was a midget because he was stabbed under the breastplate. And Leela goes, but that's how all warriors should stab, because that's the easiest way to get to the heart. And he's quite shocked by all of this.
She's a great character, I think, and it's so different to any other companion because of this particular character trait they've given her. And it does make her particular very short period as a companion of Doctor Who I think, quite a lot of fun to watch and remarkable. And to me, she's really up there with Sarah Jane as one of my favourite companions, purely because the relationship between her and the Doctor is nothing that really gets repeated until Ace and the Seventh Doctor, really.
But I'm going to say the writing of the story, the act, it's one of those points where every aspect of the production comes together, and you've got a really classic story. And even to this day, it's still remembered.
It holds up. And this is one of the long ones. This is 6 episodes.
But it's one of those something. It's what Robert Holmes had this idea with the 6-part. Now the reason why the production team would prefer 6-parters is, of course, each story you've got to build new sets, new costumes, whatever. So if you're using them over 6, 7 or 8 episodes, you're reducing your costs over the season. 4-parters from a story wise work better, but 6-parters enable them to keep costs down. But what Robert Holmes did this thing, which is very much seen in this story and very much seen in the Seeds of Death previously, is where you almost have it like a 4-parter and a 2-parter.
Yes.
And very much the first 4 parts deal with the Doctor hunting for whoever this mysterious killer is, and the mysterious killer is based within the theatre.
Yes.
It's a bit like Magnus Greel, who's posing as the Chinese god Weng-Chiang.
Which is why Lee Sen-chung worships him, because he thinks he's a god.
Why he has the Tonga, the Black Scorpion, working for him as well. But he's working beneath the theatre, and it's those first 4 episodes very much deal with that. And Weng-Chiang, Magnus Greel, is very much kind of in the background, and Lee Sen-chang is almost like the villain in the foreground.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the 4th episode, that's when it all moves to Weng-Chiang gets his base in the Limehouse, and it kind of like moves there. So Robert Holmes is very, very good, and it doesn't feel like there's any padding in the story.
Not at all.
It goes at a fantastic pace. It's really good. And the great news for all Doctor Who fans is, if you've never seen this story before, if you've only ever watched new Doctor Who, you've never experienced classic, then I'd say you get out there, go down to your local HMV or whatever stores Doctor did DVDs, and you get the Revisitations box set #1, because you not only get this classic story, you get the Doctor Who movie and the Caves of Androzani. You get 3 fantastic stories at a budget price, but they're all like 2 or 3 I mean, the Talons of Weng-Chiang is 3 discs long.
Absolutely.
You've got 2 discs of extras, and the other stories have got an extra disc of all extras. And for what you're paying, it's the very best of Doctor Who, and it's just chock full of fantastic extras.
On Twitter, Total Nerdy Bird says, "Enjoyed your show, and you've inspired me to make the Talons of Weng-Chiang my next DVD purchase."
You've got to. It's just, and the great thing also about the talent, for a lot of fans of new Doctor Who, the problem with old classic Doctor Who when they go and watch it is the budgetary restrictions. So you can have a story like The Invasion of the Dinosaurs, which has got a fantastic script and is really well acted, and then you've got like clay dinosaurs attacking each other, and terrible special effects which sometimes ruin what should be a very good story. And a lot of the older viewers like ourselves, we can ignore the bad, but a lot of younger viewers can't. I know the Talons of Weng-Chiang got a lot of criticism for the giant rat. There's a giant rat in it which you barely see, and it is barely in it. And apart from that, the location filming, the sets, the costumes, this is Doctor Who at its best. This is Doctor Who where the production is fantastic.
And of course, everyone's used to the Doctor always has his uniform, but this one, the Doctor wears a disguise and he dresses up as Sherlock Holmes.
Well, it's similar, but it's because he's got the Deerstalker hat.
But you can't but help bring a complete smile to your face, because it's already just from the beginning. As soon as you see the Doctor wearing the Deerstalker in Victorian London, you think brilliant.
And it was kind of interesting. Russell T Davies said that when he took over Doctor Who about 6-7 years ago, he actually pointed out this story. And he said the writing in this story is on the level, is up there with Dennis Potter. But because it's science fiction, it gets ignored. but the dialogue, the writing in it, and this was also the story that Russell T Davies gave to Christopher Eccleston on DVD and said, watch this to see how to play Doctor Who. And this was actually what Christopher Eccleston used as his jumping board, as it were, to creating his character.
The Gallifrey Times says, totally agree with what you've said, Sean. And Yoz Creative says, I miss Ace and the 7th Doctor.
Well, the good news there, if you miss Ace and the 7th Doctor, in 2 weeks' time there's an Ace box set coming out, and you've got Dragonfire on it, and the Happiness Patrol. And that only leaves one more Sylvester McCoy story to come out on DVD, and then we're all done on Sylvester McCoy.
The greatest show in the galaxy.
Yes.
Which sums up Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Now, also, for trivia buffs, okay, this is an interesting story because the origins of Captain Jack come from the Talons of Weng-Chiang.
Yes, they do.
Weng-Chiang is obviously the character that Magnus Creel is impersonating.
Yeah.
Magnus Creel himself is a war criminal from the 50th century, and is the first human to time travel, because obviously humans they're not a time traveling race. We're not. It's taken us several centuries, but in the 50th century, Magnus Creel becomes the first person to time travel, which is the whole basis of this particular story.
Yes.
And of course, his concern, is that he's going to get captured by the police who monitor this kind of behaviour, which are the time agents.
Yes, and he thinks the Doctor is a time agent.
He thinks the Doctor is actually a time agent. And of course, this is what Captain Jack is. Yeah. His whole origin is that he's a time agent, and why in his particular area, 51st century, I think he's from. Yeah. Is that right? They're now going around, arresting anyone who's breaking the time rules.
And Magnus Creel's time experiments are the Sigma experiments.
The Sigma experiments, yes, which are in not quite perfect time travel experiments.
They're utter failure, according to the Doctor.
It makes your face go all wobbly.
Yeah.
Or bent face.
Bent face,
which is another great thing about Leela, is the way she comes
just calls it as it is.
She doesn't care about what their characters' names are. If she thinks you should be called bent face, you're going to be called bent face, But actually, there's other great characters. Jago and Lightfoot had such great chemistry. They're now four seasons of Big Finish audio plays just based on their characters.
At the time the story aired, Robert Holmes discussed with the BBC the possibility of doing a spin-off. It's very interesting, actually. For 26 years, Doctor Who was on the air on the BBC, and they looked at doing a unit spin-off. They looked at doing a Dalek series spin-off, which apparently got to the scripting stages, and they were like a week or two away from filming the pilot for that before it fell apart. They looked at doing a Jago Lightfoot spin-off, and they did a pilot for a spin-off series with K9, and none of that ever happened. And, in 26 years it never gone. And now, but since we've had new Doctor Who, we've had Torchwood, we've had the Sarah Jane Adventures, and we've had
an American spin-off of Torchwood.
We had an American spin-off of Torchwood, which most of us fans like to forget ever existed. And there's also been 2 different cartoon series as well.
Indeed, absolutely. Plus all the various web series that they've done with the Schalke Doctor, etc. So there's been a lot. Yoz Creative says you interact with us during the show on Twitter and here on YouTube. What about Google Plus? Well, Yoz, we actually attempted to do that because we actually were running Google Plus Hangout on a second laptop here, but the firewall on our YouTube Wirecast won't accept. So we were going to try and have a Google Plus Hangout. But there you go.
Anyway, that's going to bring us towards the end of our show.
Indeed.
Now.
Yep.
There you have it. Talons of Weng-Chiang. I'm sure it's just one of those stories, as I said at the beginning of the show, is every Doctor Who fan has got their own favourites, because the Doctor Who has covered so many different styles of it in its approach. But Talons of Weng-Chiang is one of those, there's only a couple really, but it's one of those that every fan you mention to it and they're going to have a warm glow about this story. So, and it's one of the few stories that I would recommend if you've never watched classic Doctor Who, if you're into new Doctor Who, this is one of the first ones you've got to go for. Try this out, and if you don't like this, you're not going to like any classic Doctor Who. I mean, this is the best there is to offer. and just get it on the Revisitations box set, and I'm sure that you won't regret it.
Absolutely, I second that wholeheartedly. I'm sure Barry does as well, because he picked it as his number 1 story.
Yes.
Guys, thanks for joining us.
So do you know when we'll be back?
Well, we'll have to obviously do another one before.
What, the 11th?
So
we'll have to be back in May. We'll have to do a look at the Ace box set and what other new... I mean, there's a lot of rumours coming up about the new series, but how many of these can we discuss? I mean, we mentioned from the press release, the BBC had released, and they stated what one of the villains coming back next season was. We mentioned that on the show, and straight away we got a text from one of my friends saying, "You've spoiled the new season for me, and I'm not watching your show anymore." So we have to be careful about what spoilers we can reveal.
Well, I suppose if it's an internet spoiler, it's a spoiler. If it's been published in a newspaper, then it's probably come from an official source.
Yeah.
That's the way I see it.
Some people get upset about the official sources. I still say Ice Warriors and Zygons for the next series.
Yeah.
I that's what I believe is coming back next season. But anyway, tweet us. You can watch.
Yep.
You can subscribe to us. You can watch us on YouTube. Like us. Leave a comment. We're on iTunes.
We are on iTunes.
We're all over the internet. Every kind of form of internet. We're on there except for MySpace.
TalkingWho.com, Facebook.com/TalkingWho, Twitter.com/TalkingWho, Blip.tv/TalkingWho, Gplus.to/TalkWho, and search on iTunes for Doctor Who Talking Who.
Anyway, I'm Sean Harry.
And I'm Elisabeth.
And we've been Talking Who. It's almost instantaneous. How's it been going on the short film?